I'm Eric Anderson. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, they are 4 women in positions of power, and all of them say they were targets of inappropriate behavior by San Diego Mayor Bob Filner. And they're talking exclusively to us.
I'm Peggy Pico. Also ahead, our in-depth look at notable sexual harassment cases in the U.S. and the impact of accusers when they come forward.
Mayor Filner is not answering questions about the accusations against him, and San Diego Democrats are deciding their next step tonight. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. Dwayne Brown is off tonight. The leaders of San Diego's Democratic Party are beginning a meeting right now to talk about the sexual harassment scandal surrounding Mayor Bob Filner. Sources tell KPBS the committee will call on him to resign. They say the vote is, quote, a done deal. Now, if a vote does come during this newscast, we'll bring you the information as quickly as possible. Just last week, the committee split evenly on that same question. Since then, however, 7 women have come forward to say that Filner made unwanted sexual advances toward them, either during his time as mayor or when he was in Congress. 4 of them talked exclusively today with KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma.
They represent a cross-section of San Diego women who hold powerful positions. One is a retired rear admiral in the Navy. Another is a successful entrepreneur. One is responsible for overseeing the interests of San Diego's port tenants. And another is a leader in local academia. But these 4 diverse career women are bound by a common thread. They all say they've been on the receiving end of unwanted advances and inappropriate comments from Mayor Bob Filner. Former San Diego Navy Mayor Ronnie Froman, businesswoman Patty Roscoe, San Diego Port Tenants Association President Sharon Burney Cloward, and San Diego State University Dean Joyce Gaddis are here to talk about the harassment allegations swirling around the mayor. Welcome to all of you. I want to start with each of you describing very briefly your alleged encounters with Bob Filner. Sharon, let's start with you.
Well, in 2005, Bob Filner asked me to meet him for lunch, and I didn't understand it was just a lunch at that time, and I did not accept his offer at that time. In 2010, I attended an event down in National City, and where he pulled me away from some people that I was talking to, and addressed me and asked me why did I not accept his invitation to lunch back in 2005. At that time, as I said, I didn't know it was a lunch event, a lunch gathering with Bob Filner. At that time, he said I was beautiful and that he wanted to date me. At this time, Bob Filner was going through his re-election process, so he made it clear that he would like to date me as soon as the re-election process was over. In 2012, I attended another event. At this time, Bob Filner was running for mayor, and this event was at the convention center, the Town and Country Convention Center. And he came up to me after the event was over. I was talking with friends, and he came up and gave me a hug, and then he touched me, actually groped me on my backside inappropriately. As soon as he came in, he left, and I was left there startled and fearful. In fact, I actually had someone walk me to my car that night. Just recently, I attended the Mexican trade. There was a chamber had a, I'm sorry, I'm just nervous. In 2013, just a couple months ago, Mayor Filner attended a trade mission in Mexico City, of which I was there too, along with the chamber members. He actually, several women told me, and others, that he had touched them inappropriately or he had talked to them inappropriately. And so it seems to me that there's a theme here, and you'll hear from the rest of the women here, that he seems to go beyond what you should be going beyond as far as standards today.
Ronnie?
Well, a couple of years ago, I was at Bob Filner's office, congressional office, and I was there for a meeting to talk about a veterans program. I was the only woman in the room. We had our meeting. I was there with 2 gentlemen, and Bob had a staffer in the office. As we were leaving the office, all the guys left, and I was the last one in the room. And Bob stepped between me and the doorway, and he stopped me, and he got very close to me. And he ran his finger up my cheek like this, and he whispered to me, "Do you have a man in your life?" And I jumped back. I was very, very startled. And I said, "Yes, I have a man in my life." And he said, "Who?" And I said, "Lyndon Blue." He says, "Oh, you mean of the Blues Brothers?" He says, "Maybe we can all get together sometime and have lunch, and he can support me for mayor." I was really rattled. I went out in the car, got in with the two guys I was working with, and I told them never to leave me in a room alone with Bob Filner again.
Patty?
I've known Bob Filner for a long time, since he was in the city council, and on numerous occasions he's put me in what I guess now is the famous headlock, and I felt fearful, even as well as I knew him, because it was an invasion into my space, and he would come in and try and kiss me on the lips, and I'd have to squirm to get away. And just as recently as a few months ago, this happened, and I turned, and he just slobbered down my chin, and I was so violated, and I was so offended. And on other occasions, he's gotten close to me and put his hands in inappropriate places on my body. And it's just such a terrible invasion.
Joyce, what about you?
My experiences are somewhat like Patty's. It's a series of interactions with Bob where he's held me too tight, a kiss on the cheek, which is inappropriate, hand on the knee that lasted too long. Moreover, I've been in the environments where he has made those sexual comments to others, and I've seen the interaction from others when they cringe when he's had those interactions as he's had with Patty. I've experienced his sexual innuendos with me at various events that, again, have left me in that strange feeling of this is inappropriate, this is unwanted, and this shouldn't be happening.
Sharon, when these alleged incidents occurred with you, did you report them to anyone? Did anyone see them?
There were witnesses at the 2012 event, the people that I was talking to. I did report it to my board members, looking for support from them at that time, but did I report it to anything beyond that? No, I did not.
Joyce, you helped develop sexual harassment policies at San Diego State University. Stories of sexual harassment have swirled around Bob Filner for several years. Excluding the women who came forward this week, why do you think women have been so reluctant to report their stories to authorities, to go public with them? Why do you think witnesses have been reluctant to do this?
You know, that's the irony in all of this. Yes, I was one of the women that established the sexual harassment policy at San Diego State. And just like any other policy, whether it's civil rights or women's rights or gay rights, somehow when we establish the policy, the laws, we think our job is done. And what happens is we don't keep vigilant, ever vigilant on making sure that we're implementing those laws and those policies. And what happens, we fall into this code of silence because there still is the fear of retribution and not even understanding the expansiveness of the law and how inclusive it is of a number of behaviors that constitute sexual harassment. So most people, most women and men will feel this really may not be sexual harassment, and if I come out, I'm going to be either embarrassed or I'm going to experience retribution. And so that code of silence just maintains itself. And so I wanted to be here today to say this is the time, if not now, when we've experienced these many years, and I look at women who are my peers. We all have our stories to tell of where we experienced sexual harassment. We didn't have a place to go. We never told our story, and yet we live with those stories for the rest of our lives. And I don't want women to be continuing to live with those experiences because they didn't feel like they had a place to go.
Ronnie, you're a retired Rear Admiral, a former Navy mayor. You've ascended in a field that's male-dominated. I think a lot of people will be shocked to hear that someone as powerful as you are was on the receiving end of this kind of treatment. How galled were you when this alleged incident occurred with Bob Filner?
I was so angry, and I felt violated. I just didn't expect anything like that to happen, and it made me very, very angry, and I felt violated. He got into my space.
And Patty, these sexual harassment allegations were first made public 2 weeks ago. Why come forward now?
Amita, I think enough is enough. I think that we have gotten to a point where we don't want to say, oh, that's just Bob. It's not good enough that's just Bob or Jack or Joe or Phil or anyone. Bob Filner is the leader of our city. He is in a position now where he can't be in a meeting with a female staffer. And there are young women working for him. There are young women who work in organizations that perhaps he has power over. And to think that my silence, our silence, is affecting those young women is devastating. And I think it's just time that we stood up and say, we cannot have this kind of an immoral man leading our city.
And Ronnie, you know, the mayor has come out and he has said there's a monster inside of him. He has said he needs help. He has said that he has disrespected and intimidated women. But he has also said that he doesn't believe the sexual harassment allegations and that once due process takes place, justice will prevail in his words. What do you think of his response? What do you want to see happen?
I think that he's the leader of our city. And when you raise your right hand and you take that oath to support and defend the Constitution as a public servant, what you're saying is you're signing up to a higher level of standards in your life, and your personal life and your professional life all meld in together as a leader. And you're there for people to look up to and as a role model. He's not been a role model. He's not a leader for our country, for our community. And I think that it's time for us to call for his resignation. And today, what I want to say to all the women, we're here to support all the women that have come forward. And I want to say to all the women out there that we want you to rally, and our city deserves much, much better leadership than what we have in Bob Filner, and we want to call for his resignation. And we want all the women that are still out there, because there are many, many stories in this city. We want all those women to come forward.
And we're going to close it there. Ronnie, Sharon, Joyce, Patty, thank you so much for speaking to me today.
Thank you for listening to us.
Yes.
That was KPBS investigative reporter Amita Sharma in an exclusive interview with former San Diego Navy Mayor Ronnie Froman, businesswoman Patty Roscoe, San Diego Port Tenants Association President Sharon Bernie Cloward, and San Diego State University Dean Joyce Gaddis, all of them stepping forward with allegations of unwanted sexual advances by Mayor Bob Filner. KPBS partner iNewsSource collaborated on that report. You heard one of the women say that she hopes other women come forward. The Sheriff's Department has set up a hotline to take reports. The number is there on your screen. KPBS has repeatedly asked the mayor's office to give an interview or any response to the sexual harassment allegations, but has received no response other than a prepared statement denying the accusations. At an event earlier today, Mayor Bob Filner did repeat his call for due process and told the city to take a deep breath. Mayor Filner also appeared at an event to mark the start of construction on the San Diego Trolley Blue Line. Reporters from local and national news stations swarmed him, shouting, "Are the sexual harassment allegations true? And will you resign?" He said only that there's a legal process by which all of this will be decided and that he would make no other statements. But he started his remarks about the trolley with a joke.
I see you found a wonderful way to attract media attention for our efforts on the trolley. Thank you.
After a photo opportunity with other transit leaders, Filner was again swarmed. He said nothing, but walked straight to his car and drove away. A new poll says a majority of San Diego voters don't think Filner has said enough about the accusations, and an even larger majority says he should resign. The poll was done for our media partner 10 News and UT San Diego. 69% of those polled believe Filner should resign. The mayor's job approval rating has dropped too. It's already been declining because of other controversies, the recent trip to Paris, questions over a payment from a developer, and his troubled relationship with City Attorney Jan Goldsmith. Sexual harassment law has developed over the past few decades. Here's Peggy Pico with a brief look at its history.
Sexual harassment is a relatively new legal concept, but what does it actually mean, and why are some victims reluctant to come forward? Here to help answer those questions are employment law attorney and former commissioner on California's Fair Employment and Housing Commission, Patty Perez, and Doreen Mattingly, associate professor of women's studies at San Diego State. Welcome. Doreen, walk us through a brief history of sexual harassment in this country.
Okay. In 1964, the passage of the Civil Rights Act made employment discrimination illegal. Made employment discrimination on the basis of sex illegal. And feminists at that time were trying to find a way to capture what really happened to women in the workplace. That it wasn't just that they weren't fired, but they were treated in a way that was sexualizing, demeaning, and sometimes dangerous for women. And they coined the term sexual harassment, which was used in legal cases in the 70s. When Eleanor Holmes Norton was appointed to head the EEOC in 1977, she took this on. She took on legal cases at the federal level and put against sexual harassment.
All right.
And then in 1991, when Anita Hill accused Clarence Thomas of sexual harassment, I think a lot of people who weren't in the legal profession became aware of it, and that's really when a lot of us found out about it.
Okay, and Patty, how does the public definition of sexual harassment differ from the legal one?
Well, under the legal standard, in order for it to be unlawful harassment under the Fair Employment and Housing Act, which is California's law, you have to have an employment relationship. So it does involve people who work together, in many instances a boss and a subordinate, and there are some very specific elements. It has to be unwelcome conduct that's subjectively and objectively unwelcome. It has to be either severe or pervasive, and it has to unreasonably interfere with your ability to work.
And Doreen, historically and in your experience, what keeps women from coming forward if they think they've been sexually harassed?
Well, part is what we're seeing right now with the women who've accused Bob Filner. Now the attention has turned to them. And so fear of being the center of attention, fear of retaliation, fear that nothing will be done. Also, in general in society, the people who are most likely to be harassed are the most vulnerable people in a workplace that have the most to lose. And so that power differential, the fear about what will happen to them, keeps women from coming forward.
I want to let people know we had some comments on our website questioning the motives of women who have come forward that have been alleging sexual harassment of the mayor. I want to read a couple of them. I Love San Diego wrote, and this second lady capitalizing on something from 10 years ago for her 15 minutes of fame. And from Philosopher 3000 wrote, this appropriately named political consultant, i.e. fundraising party planner, looks and dresses like a high-priced call girl. If I met this sexy woman at a party, I might do the same thing. Janda SD praised Fink originally for her initial response, but then added, I was not anywhere close to sexual. It was not anywhere close to sexual harassment. What I would do is laugh it off, shake my butt, make a joke back, as it was clearly a joke in that context. Doreen, what do you make of these?
I think it's interesting that now we're talking about specific women and their behavior rather than the question of whether or not City Hall is a equal, safe place for women to work, which is the issue, what's at issue here, and that's why sexual harassment is a problem. It's a form of gender discrimination, and this is exactly why people don't come forward.
What about the idea that you were provoking, well, maybe I should ask you this, what about the idea that you were provoking or encouraging harassment behavior because of the way you're dressed or the way you look?
Well, again, there's a different answer from a legal perspective and more of a psychological or workplace perspective. From a legal perspective, what that goes to is the question as to whether the behavior was truly unwelcome from a subjective perspective. It would typically take a lot more than just dressing provocatively to show that, in fact, you wanted or welcomed that behavior.
And we're not saying that any of these people that are accusing the mayor were dressed provocatively. We were just responding to that web comment. Let me ask you this, Patty, what is the best way to ask or question somebody who is alleging sexual harassment without maybe re-victimizing them?
It's a little more difficult when you're doing so in, for example, a deposition context. That tends to be a more adversarial process. When I do my work and conduct investigations and do interviews with these victims, I set the stage, first of all, to make sure that they understand exactly what my job is, that I'm not here to judge them or to re-victimize them, to apologize in advance for any questions that I might ask that might delve into personal or embarrassing matters. And then I really just try to be as empathetic a listener as I can be when I ask the questions to get the facts.
Okay. Thank you. thank you both so much for the update and talking with us. And I want to let folks know that they can see the whole timeline and read a whole lot more on our website, kpbs.org, under the Filner files. Thanks again.
Thank you.
As Peggy said, our website has links to all of our coverage, including our exclusive interviews and documents that have been made public so far. The web address is kpbs.org/news/Filner. San Diego's Tourism Authority is cutting costs and laying off 40% of its staff. 31 people are being laid off next week as the agency struggles to cope with funding issues. Now, the agency is only expecting about 15% of the money they got last year. The rest of the revenue generated by a 2% room tax surcharge is tied up because of ongoing litigation, and hotel owners are concerned about how that'll be played out. Tourism Authority Director Joe Terzi says there is no money for ad campaigns, and that could hurt local tourism. Earlier in this newscast, we showed you Mayor Bob Filner's appearance at an event for the San Diego Trolley. Well, it was a kickoff to the expansion of the system's oldest line. The Blue Line was first completed back in 1981, and it makes nearly 20 million trips a year. It's getting upgraded, and transportation officials hope that will make the Blue Line trips quicker and more convenient.
It's our way of saying thank you to our riding public and to attract new riders to public transit.
The expansion includes new track, raised platforms, new shelters, and enhanced access between bus and trolley service. Construction is expected to be complete by next fall. Homeowners who pay Mello-Roos property taxes in San Diego County might want to double-check their bills. Our media partner, iNewsSource, has been investigating the special tax and uncovered several problems with people being under and overcharged. Now the Poway Unified School District says some of its homeowners have received incorrect tax bills. iNewsSource reporter Joanne Farian joins me now to explain. Joanne, why are people getting incorrect tax bills?
Well, the root of the problem seems to be square footage. Unlike a regular property tax bill, which is based on how much you paid for your house, Mello-Roos is based mostly on square footage. And as a reminder to people at home, Mello-Roos is an add-on property tax people in newer developments pay. It's supposed to cover the costs of roads, sewers, and schools in those developments. It appears as though in some cases, the city of San Diego's record of square footage is different than the county record. In some cases, the square footage on the city's building permits is so off, some homeowners have been overcharged as much as $6,000 too much every year on their tax bill.
Now, the Poway School District says it is dealing with this problem. Why do City of San Diego building permits impact Poway?
Well, much of the Poway School District actually spills into the city of San Diego, mostly in the Penasquitos, Del Sur, Forest Ranch area. That also happens to be in San Diego Councilman Mark Kersey's district. He's now asking the Poway School District to audit all of its Mello-Roos tax districts in light of this.
Well, we just want to make sure that the bills that the taxpayers are getting for these infrastructure and school-related services are what they should be. I mean, that's really what this comes down to, is just making sure that the process is transparent, that officials are accountable, and that the bills are fair.
And finally, Joanne, do we know how many people are impacted by this?
We don't. From our own data analysis of just one district with 344 homes, we found 28 inconsistencies in tax bills. Poway says it's working with the city to figure out the scope of the problem and how to fix it. Now, homeowners can find out whether they pay Mello-Roos taxes by searching our map. Go to kpbs.org/taxes.
iNewsSource reporter Joanne Farian, thanks.
I'm Jeffrey Brown. On the next News Hour, inmates in solitary confinement in California mount a hunger strike. That's Thursday on the PBS NewsHour.
The San Diego Chargers back at Chargers Park today. Training camp got underway with new faces like rookie Manti Te'o and familiar ones like quarterback Phillip Rivers. Now, the team does have a new head coach. Mike McCoy is in charge of the team. Fans will be able to check out the team during 8 more practices, and you can find the dates and the times of those practices at kpbs.org. The forecast is calling for more cloudy weather along the coast. For the inland valleys, 80s and overcast. The mountains should get some thunderstorms, clearing by Sunday, however. A little overcast in the desert tomorrow, but then sunny and hot. Tonight's stories are online at kpbs.org/evening edition. Now, at the beginning of this newscast, we told you about tonight's meeting of the Democratic Central Committee. Party leaders called it in the wake of several women coming forward to accuse Mayor Bob Filner of making unwanted sexual advances. We first brought you stories of 6 of those women right here on KPBS. The party is expected to vote tonight on whether to call on Filner to resign. In a similar vote last week, they split evenly, but it may be a different story tonight. Sources tell KPBS that the committee will vote to call for Filner's resignation. We're waiting for a word on that vote, and we have all the latest online at kpbs.org. And tomorrow, it'll be on Morning Edition on 89.5 KPBS. Thanks very much for joining us. Have a good night.